Hey guys, how's it going? It is like 4 degrees outside, and I'm not a fan. Okay, today I am doing what everybody else is doing because it looked fun and I wanted to. And I'm going to list off 25 books that I would like to read in 2025. Most of these are ones that have been on my long wish list for a while, and I just need this to prioritize them so I don't keep pushing them off and then it's 2026. Wow. And they still haven't been read. So I'm not going to get into details for most of them on what they are. You can look them up. I will list them all in the description below, but I'm going to try to not make this a gajillion minutes long. All right, I'm just diving in. Number one, every time somebody talks about this book, I go, gosh, I still haven't read that, and I'm dying to read it every time. So it's got to happen in the next couple of months, and that book is I Who Have Never Known Men by author names, Jacqueline Harpman. It is a translated book. I'm not even sure what language it's translated from right now. This one is a shorty. It's under 200 pages. Basically, it takes place in a deserted world, and there are women who have been kept in a cage, in a basement, I believe. I think they're eventually let out or get out, and it's kind of about them taking in the world that they've been locked away from for so long. I haven't heard a single person say a bad thing about this book. I'm sure there are people who don't like it, but I've heard so many people talk about it, and everybody liked it. So next one doesn't have a lot of rhyme or reason. I did say in my last video that the random thing I would like to do this year is read books set in Russia. I grew up wanting to go to Moscow so badly, and I love the language. I love the architecture. I love the music. So I want to read books that are set in Russia this year. A Gentleman in Moscow, that title just makes me want to read the book, and the covers are always very romantic looking. So I don't know anything about it. I'll read you something from Storygraph. It's by, I don't know if it's Towles or Amor Towles, but it's about 450 pages, a little more. I just finally read for the first time what it's about, and wow. It's a story about a man who was ordered to spend the rest of his life inside a luxury hotel in the 20s. I am either going to love this book or be very disappointed in it, and I really, really hope that it's the first one, because for some reason, this one is just pulling me in more than most of the books on my wish list. Next up, I haven't read any Joan Didion, and that's just a name where I'm like, I've heard enough people say enough things that really intrigued me that I need to at least see if I like that author. There are certain authors that you gotta try because they're such a big deal. They might not be for you, but you will have educated yourself on them a little bit and exposed yourself to them. So this is me testing the waters with Joan Didion. I would like to read the White Album. My understanding is that's a series of essays about life in the 60s. There's a lot you can learn from that decade. So yeah, she's actually another one that I'm really wanting to like. Just a lot of her books sound interesting, so I'm hoping that I like how she presents her ideas. Lonesome Dove. I knew it was long, but I didn't know it's as long as it is. But I'm still gonna do it because this book has had a resurgence recently. It just blew up all over again, even though it's an older book. And even though it's that long, people are still willing to read it because everybody's raving about it so much. There was somebody who said this was one of his favorite characters of all time, the main character, and I've heard a lot of people say that they're very attached to that character. I really want to try it. It's a very country book, that's for sure, which is typically not what I would go towards, but the curiosity is getting me. Sword of Kaigen. Gosh, I am really going for long books this year. I'm excited. This one's about 650 pages. It's by Wang, and it's a mother-son fantasy story, which I have not read. Yeah, I don't think I've read any fantasy story where a mother and son were the two main characters, and that is very, very, very appealing to me. So I'm very excited to see how that changes the feel of this, looking at those relationship dynamics. People love this book. People really, really love this book, and I think it might be an indie book. Take that with a grain of salt, but I feel like it might be an indie book. Ernest Hemingway. I have not exposed myself to him yet, and you just see quotes, lines from his books on social media around, and they're always very beautiful. They're always absolutely lovely, and people love this man. they love him. So I just feel like that's one that I just have to see. You know, that's just a classic that, out of respect for the book world, I need to see if I like. I'm going to choose to read The Sun Also Rises. I believe it's set in maybe Spain and France back in the day. Can't remember what decade. They don't know anything else about it, and that's fine with me. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So shockingly, as much as this book gets talked about, I feel like people tend to lead with their feelings about it rather than what it's actually about. Like, all the reviews I've seen didn't explain well what the book was about. It was just like, this is how it made me feel, which is fine. But yeah, I don't really know what the story is. I just want to read it because it's got a cool title and it's been kind of a hit. That's really it, but I really want to read it really badly. Titles can do a lot for me. Wait, where are we? Okay, The Atlas Six by Olivie Blake. Honestly, the main reason, I think the only reason that I really want to read her is I've heard her writing style can be sort of divisive. Some people think it's really beautiful and literary, and some people find it very snobby. I, of course, have to just see where I stand on that. I'm just very nosy when it comes to like controversial or divisive books. Like, I'm very nosy. I want to know whose side I'm on. It's kind of annoying, but listen, if that's the kind of drama I'm drawn to, I'm fine with that. There are way worse kinds of drama. So yeah, I don't even really know what the book's about. I think it's like dark academia fantasy, which honestly to me sounds like I probably won't like it, just because I feel like when people are trying to hit this jackpot of tropes that are really popular at the moment, the performance tends to fall flat. And I feel like people can rely on those very popular tropes and vibes and not actually write a good book. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I actually don't have that high of hopes for this. That's just a curiosity thing for me. Oh my god, yes. Next one is Empire of Pain, and I know this one will be good. There are no doubts that this will be good. This is a nonfiction, and it is by Patrick Radden Keefe, who is the same brilliant man who wrote Say Nothing, which was one of my favorite books of last year. Also a nonfiction, and this one is about rich folks doing stupid, crazy stuff. It is about the family who made OxyContin and just how messed up and twisted all of that was. Just the whole drug issue. People pushing prescription drugs on people and getting them hooked, and it's going to be so messed up. It's going to be bad. It's going to be painful to listen to, but I have it coming from Libby soonish. Inferno by Dante. This one is not what I would expect me to pick, but one of my favorite singers is Hozier. I've been following that man since before he had an album, and he's brilliant and just so intelligent and so crafty, and his album was based off of Dante's Inferno, so I have to read it now. That's it. That's all there is to it. Babble by R.F. Kuang. I'm going to read Babble, which I have started. When I first got Everand, we are no longer on speaking terms. I had Babble as the ebook that I would just kind of read like while I was getting my nails done or waiting on something, and I didn't have a physical book with me. I would just like read 10 or 20 pages. And so far I'm interested, and I really like the writing, which is so interesting because I could not get very far in the audiobook of Yellowface, mainly just because I found the main character so obnoxious, which, like, I know she's supposed to be whatever. I just can't do it. Babble so far I like enough to be still curious. I know it's a really long book, but I don't mind long books if they are good enough to be that long. So I'm going to keep going with this one and see what happens. Next up, I'm going to do 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is longer. It's about 400-ish pages. It's a classic. It's one that you just hear in many circles of the reading community, and I just feel like it's one that I need to check out. It's just on the list. It's on the list of authors and books that you just have to see if you like. I believe it's magical realism. I don't really know what it's about because it doesn't matter. I'm reading it. I don't need to be sold on it, and I feel like sometimes it's a good idea to go in blind on classics because there are just so many opinions, especially with an older classic. People have been forming opinions about this and writing essays about this for years, and I don't want to have any preconceived notions in my head about what this is. I just want to take things in as they're presented to me, the way it would have been if I read this when it was a new release. I actually have the next one. It's the autobiography of Malcolm X. I have been telling myself to get it together and read this for so long. It's a little intimidating. Okay? But I got this used copy which has some highlights in it, which is really exciting because I love seeing what other people highlight. I live for that. Super annoying thing about Nebraska, where I currently live, of all the famous people we had back in the day, because we used to have good famous people, for all the people that we like to say, well, so-and-so was from here, so-and-so was from here, I have never heard anybody say that Malcolm X is from Nebraska. I had no idea, and I feel like it's going to be really, really interesting reading about this if it starts in his youth, which I imagine it will. Typically autobiographies do. It's going to be crazy reading it because I'm going to be reading about the people that are around me. I'm going to be reading about the older people that I grew up with and how they treated this man. So it's going to be a very, very interesting reading experience for me specifically, being from where he's from. Next is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Sugimura. This is one that I've heard very mixed things on it, but the people that loved it really loved it a lot, and it sounds just like a magical good time, and I really trust the taste of the one person who's absolutely obsessed with this book, so I'm gonna give it a go. I think it's basically about a girl who doesn't have the happiest life, and then she finds her way into a mirror world where there's a castle, and I think she kind of prefers that world. And that's really all I know. It's super vague what I know, but I have been obsessed with the cover from the first time I saw it. And sometimes I just want to read things because I like the cover. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I will love or hate this book because I know it's a slower pace and I know it's a lot to do with mental health and processing things and how that affects relationships. And sometimes it's hard for me to read just because I have so many struggles with mental health on my own that I don't really like reading about it because it just brings on a way too familiar and unwelcome feeling to be tossed into those vibes, and that's just not why I read. So we will see how this goes. It is about a married couple, and one of them spends a long time underwater. I think that she gets maybe stranded at the bottom of the ocean or something. Insanely dramatic and traumatic and awful. And she returns, and it obviously shifts things in her marriage significantly. And it's just about her and her wife trying to get through that. I'm nervous for this one, but I just want it to be hopefully not quite as difficult as I'm expecting it to be. Next up is Jane Against the World by Karen Blumenthal. This is a book breaking down Roe v. Wade and women's reproductive rights and just sort of what that whole area of politics has been going through. It's about 400 pages. I think I'm waiting for it on Libby on audiobook though, which I'm torn on. This is one that I feel like I'm going to want a physical copy so that I can highlight names and cases and politicians. But this one I'm really pumped to read. It's going to be so infuriating to read, but it's going to be so good for me and any future arguments I might need to have with anybody. Okay, next up, this one is going to take a while to read. It's Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. This is one discussing how there is a hidden caste system in America and all the different ways that society discriminates against people and where that influence has come from. And it's just a whole huge look at a whole huge issue. And it sounds like the reason this book is popular is because this writer nailed the approach and the presentation and the breakdown and organization of how to get this into a book that addresses a lot, but that is digestible for the everyday person. And that's why I love Patrick Radden Keefe. So I'm really excited to read this. This is a book that people really love, even people who don't read much nonfiction. It's supposed to be that good. The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is a fantasy. I've seen people who read more new fantasy and YA fantasy and like trendier fantasy who like this book, and I've seen people who are into like old, long, really intense classic fantasy who also really love this book. I think it's like a found family deal. There's thievery, there's royalty, there's like a bustling, very fantastical city. I don't know. People really like it. It sounds interesting. That's really all I need with fantasy. Like, there's not much I need to be sold on a fantasy book. Unwell Women by Eleanor Cleghorn, I think. This is a book where I know I'm going to be so worked up reading it. So worked up reading it. Because if you have not been through the struggle of being a woman who needs medical help and not being listened to, like, you're one of the few and you are fortunate. It is so irritating, and it is just so wild to me how, like, barbaric medicine is in how it treats people and how it looks down on the people that the doctors are there to serve. I'm getting ahead of myself. Like, I know when I read this book and I record my thoughts on it afterwards, that video is gonna be long, and I will try, but like, it's such an infuriating issue that is like not getting any better. Basically, this book is perfect for me. I'm gonna feel things about it. I do think it's one everybody should read though, because like, this is such a huge problem. It's everywhere. It's just the standard, unfortunately. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch is one, it's kind of hard to explain why I want to read it so bad. It's, you know those books where if you see a certain type of person talking about them and you don't see a certain type of person talking about them, it's a green light for you? Maybe that's just me, but like, because it means they're not just trendy. It means that like a certain type of person is seeking them out. And if I have overlapping tastes with that person, then I'm going to go for it. So this is a thriller. I always like the cover, no matter which edition it is. And just, I don't know. I'm just curious. Oh boy. Beloved by Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison is just like, I want to read her and I do not want to read her. Okay? The Bluest Eye was astonishingly good. It was so terrible to read. And that's just what she writes. Because it's not stuff that's fun to hear about, but it's stuff that you need to hear about and that you need to think about and that you need to talk about. I'm going to do, I think, Beloved. There's a whole library of really great books to read from with her. Beloved is just the one that I have been seeing on my feeds most recently, and I just want to have a lot of videos to watch after I read it on other people's opinions about it. So that's why I'm going to go with Beloved. I don't even know what it's about. I've read the synopsis of all of her books, but I get them mixed up now. I don't know which one this is. I don't care. I just know that she's stupid talented and I need to get through all of her books at some point. So it's time. It's time to do another one. I read The Bluest Eye in the summer. So we're due. Okay. Sorry, my hair's just straight up annoying me. The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón is one that I've had on my TBR for a minute, on my wish list. This is about a man who, he has a book. I don't know how he got it. He has a book, and I think he goes to find more of the author's works, and he can't find them. And then when he's looking for the author's other works, he discovers that he can't find any other copies of the books he has, because somebody has been going through and just destroying all of his author's work. So he's trying to figure out what's happening, why it's happening, who's doing it. And this author is very, very highly respected, and people really love this book. What's the rating? It's 4.23 stars on Storygraph. That's really good. It's about 500 pages. I don't know if it's magical realism at all. No. Literary thriller. That's exactly what I'm trying to read this year. So this fits in super well with my reading goals, actually. I feel confident that I'm going to say this author's name wrong, but the next book is First Love by Lily Danziger. Anyways, it's essays on friendship. I've heard one person speak about this book, and I think there's a good chance I'm going to want to like this book a lot more than I actually do. But the way she spoke about it, I just have to read it in case I actually do love it, because I want to love it in the way that she loves it. And what she is saying about this book, the person I heard about it from, is that this book really examines having friends as your first loves. Like, those are the first people that you choose to stick it out with. Those are the first people in your life that you make a decision to give your time, give your emotions, put in all this effort, even when things are not good. And that sounds like a really fascinating book. Oh, it's short too. It's 224 pages. And I think it's mostly about female friendships. So, yeah, I really want to love this one. I want to love this one so bad. So the last one is, gosh, what age group is this book really for? I think it's considered YA. I believe this is considered YA. It's How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents by Julia Alvarez. And this is just a book that I have heard a lot of Latinas in my life say is a very formative book for them. And it's about a family who comes from DR to New York in the 60s. And I spent most of my time in New York living in Dominican and Puerto Rican neighborhoods. So this will just be very, like, it will feel very homey for me in a way, because my favorite neighborhood that I ever lived in New York is so Dominican, and I miss it a lot. So this will be good for me in that sense, but I also have developed this extreme curiosity with, like, you tell me a book was formative for you, I'm reading it. Like, I don't have any books that were formative for me. I wasn't reading fiction, aside from Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter were the only, like, fiction books I really read as a kid who was, like, thinking about who I am as a person. Like, when I was little, I'm sure I was reading more, but eventually I went to nonfiction. So I don't have any books that I consider formative. And I wish that I had been reading at the ages where that would have been helpful. But I think it's a huge curiosity for me when people actually do feel like books are formative for them. I am just dying to know what's in them, what they talk about, and what they got out of it. So this one, I think I'm really gonna like. That's it. Did it. 25 books. There are so many more that I was just like, oh shoot, I didn't put this on the list. There are so many books that I want to read, but I think I did a good job at, like, getting some of my top ones that have been postponed the last year on here. There's a good mix of things. It's going to keep me nice and focused. The other goal is to get through those guys there. Oh, I forgot to put my philosophy book on here. It's fine. It's already on my TBR. Philosophy books are also going to be a massive priority for me. If you have any recommendations for philosophy books for newbies, please let me know. Please let me know. I have Letters from a Stoic right now. That's what I'm going to start with, by Seneca. If you have any recommendations for things that I should read this year, or even just links to other people's 25 for 25 videos, because I love stalking other people's TBRs, please let me know. I'm really excited for all of these. I really want to prioritize getting this done, because if I look back at the end of 2025 and I can actually say that I got all of these knocked out, like, that'll be huge for me. So I feel very motivated. We'll see. That's it for today. That's everything. Next week is going to be Hopefuls for February, which is going to be a little bit different and very fun, because I'm doing, like, a collab TBR with my best book friend Gabby, and we're going to read books that were written in the 90s together. And most of them, we're reading the same book, but then we're going to pick one that's a different book, and we're not telling each other what that book is. So it's going to be a fun throwback TBR. We're going to do Fight Club. We're going to do Poor Things. It's going to be really good. Have a great week, everyone. See you in the next video.